cancer. It's one of the most common diseases, as sad as it is. But want to know something that's even more common? Aging. At some point in our lives, we begin to suffer from age, as some of us are affected further by developing chronic diseases like cancer. And yes, I just call cancer an effect of aging, minus leukemia, because that's a blood cancer. This is because as age increases, our risk of cancer increases as well, and that's exponentially. But wait, that isn't the only link between cancer and aging. What if I told you there were actual biological processes that provide evidence of a connection between aging and cancer? Is your interest piqued? Let's learn more. Before we start linking the two, let's learn a little bit about cancer's biology. So, in short, cancer happens when some of the body's cells begin to divide without stopping, and they spread into surrounding tissues. Essentially, it's uncontrollable cell division. Normally, our bodies, they divide their cells and they repair the old cells that have died. It's kind of a constant cycle, but small mutations each time the cells divide build up and cause harm to these cells, and eventually they might just start dividing rapidly without stopping. So what triggers this uncontrollable division? Well, it's because of genetics. Cancer is a genetic disease, which means it is caused by changes in genes that control the way our cells function. In this case, particularly how these cells grow and divide. Since cancer is a genetic disease, this disease can be inherited from your parents right from the get-go. On the flip side, genetic changes can also arise during a person's lifetime, due to errors that occur as cells divide or because of damage to DNA caused by specific environmental exposures like smoking and radiation. Eventually, because of this DNA damage, these mutations, when the cell divides, builds up, and these formerly known perfect cells become imperfect, and that leads to a lot of bad things. Overall, cancer cells have more genetic changes, like mutations in DNA, than regular cells. Some of these changes might not even have anything to do with cancer, but they're a result of cancer rather than its cause. And guess what? The frequency of these DNA changes increases drastically as we age. Sounds like a potential link, right? Speaking of age, there's no one defining mechanism of age, and we're not nearly close enough to knowing them all. There are a variety of hallmarks of aging that contribute to what we do know about aging. There's actually 9 known hallmarks. The hallmark we are going to talk about is genomic instability. Now, we kind of touched on this in cancer's biology, but basically this happens when chromosomes become less stable as cells continue aging. When the repair mechanisms our body has in place to repair these divisions and correct these mutations, they fail to correct DNA damage because these mutations accumulate and lead to aging and disease. It's just like a car. Our body can't take too much before going haywire. Now let's get into the meaty bit, the actual linking these two. Cancer and aging are more alike than you might have thought. They share a whole bunch of biological processes which can be taken into consideration when we're developing cancer treatments. So first, in both aging and cancer, genomic instability is increased. Basically, human DNA is vulnerable to things called mutagens, which are chemical compounds or forms of radiation, and we're exposed to these constantly over our lifetime. Our cells go through cell division billions of times, where the DNA is replicated each time. But this also introduces the risk of mutational events each time in those billion times. Genomic instability is the most relevant enabling hallmark that leads to cancer cells to gain many of the driving cancer traits, like self-sufficiency in growth signals and increased metastatic potential. This is the spread of cancer cells. The longer we live, the more errors our genes accumulate. And over time, these errors, these mutations, can lead to cancer. Beyond these cellular changes, at a bit of a bigger scope, our other bodily processes become less effective with age as well. For example, the body's immune system becomes less protective and resilient, and it's less efficient in detecting and fighting infections and diseases, including cancer. We're kind of seeing a positive correlation here. However, in a way, cancer and aging can actually be considered rivaling processes too. When we're young, we have high levels of gatekeeper cell cycle proteins, like p53. High levels of these proteins result in senescence, which is the loss of cell function, and apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. These high levels are there in order to protect us from harmful mutations which eventually lead to cancer. However, these high levels, this whole process, leads to aging. So basically, higher senescence and apoptosis leads to aging. So, okay, let's leave that behind. We use this process, but now we're old. Now, the levels of cell cycle gatekeeping proteins decrease because they've been worn out from age, and our cells stop dividing. And they can't create these proteins anymore. And now, these low levels now allow cells with genetic mutations to propagate and promote cancer. Genomic instability reflects the wear and tear on cells over time, leading to controlled cell death and loss of tissue in aging. Yet, it also represents the variable risk of accumulating changes that influence uncontrolled cell division and expansion in cancer. It's like a game of tug of war, but no side ever wins. When we're young, functions are set in stone to make us age, but prevent cancer. Now that we've aged, these functions wear down, making us prone to cancer. How can we win? When we look at the causes of cancer through an aging scope, many treatments can actually be developed for both aging and cancer. Calorie restrictions slow down aging. Anything that slows down aging also postpones cancer. This predicts that drugs that slow down the aging process will delay or even prevent cancer. By the way, it was actually discovered that our two birds, cancer and aging, can actually be tackled with one stone: senolytic drugs. One such study was conducted at the Institute of Oncology Research, where they actually revealed the role of aging cells in the formation of secondary cancer tumors in our body, and they also identified a drug capable of blocking these tumors. Basically, the researchers identified a specific gene called TIMP1, which pushes senescent cancer cells to play an active role in the formation of these secondary tumors. If this gene is lost or inactivated, the composition of this process of this gene is reprogrammed, making the tumor more aggressive and invasive. So basically, if they kick out this gene out of the function, out of the equation, the tumor becomes more unstable and more aggressive. Based on this huge discovery, an attempt was made to incorporate senolytic drugs, which are essentially senescent cell killing drugs, in order to stop this process. They discovered that the gene, TIMP1, was the key gene that determined the type of senescence in prostate cancer, for example, and that the formation of these secondary tumors could be blocked by eliminating those senescent cells in those processes. This study paves the way for clinical research and clinical use of senolytic drugs, which are typically used as anti-aging drugs. But now, with this discovery, we can fight cancer with an anti-aging drug. That's pretty cool. And more specifically, with this particular study and research, we can stop the formation of secondary tumors. So we can stop the spread of cancer within the body. Aging and cancer are tightly interconnected, and many of the same strategies and drugs can be used to target both. Cancer can be considered an aging disease, but many of their shared mechanisms and underlying processes remain unclear. A better understanding of this link is needed in research. Aging is the biggest risk-increasing factor for not only cancer, but countless degenerative diseases as well. It sounds unreal, but what if we could decrease this risk for every single disease by simply delaying age? We can. However, only with a deeper understanding of the driving functions behind aging. Let's solve both. Now you know the biology of cancer, some of the hallmarks of aging, and even the fascinating link between cancer and aging. And it might be crazy, but if we can develop a drug that targets aging, we can ultimately tackle tens and dozens of diseases at the same time. Let's bring down disease. We just need to delay aging.